On Father's Day, my daughter Lydia handed her father-in-law Mark an extravagant cruise package worth $12,500, paid for using money that disappeared from my account. When it came to me, she tossed a $2 lottery ticket across the table with a grin that stung worse than an insult. "If you win anything, half belongs to me," she said with laughter in her voice. I forced a smile, but inside my chest was burning. That cheap slip of paper, the joke she made at my expense, turned into $115 million. And with it, I finally showed her a lesson that she will never forget. Before we continue, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if your own daughter humiliated you in front of family and then tried to claim half of your winnings? Father's Day was supposed to feel special, or at the very least respectful. I had cooked a modest meal at my house, setting the table with care, polishing the old silverware, and placing flowers in the center vase. My daughter Lydia arrived with her husband's family, carrying her usual air of superiority as though she were walking into a room to inspect rather than to celebrate. She hugged me lightly, her perfume strong enough to linger in my kitchen long after she stepped back. I noticed she carried 2 envelopes, one in her purse and another larger box wrapped in expensive ribbon. She had that mischievous look in her eyes, the same one she wore as a child when she thought she was about to outsmart me. I forced a smile and tried to push aside my unease. When the time came for gifts, Lydia cleared her throat dramatically, as though the moment had been rehearsed. She reached into her purse and pulled out a crumpled envelope. "Happy Father's Day, Dad," she said, tossing it onto the table as if it were nothing more than a receipt. I opened it carefully and slid out a small lottery ticket worth $2. The kind you pick up at the gas station on your way to buy milk. She smirked, and before I could respond, she added with mock sweetness, "If you win, remember half belongs to me." Her husband's father, Mark, sat straight in his chair across from me, and his presence seemed to embolden her even further. I stared at the ticket, my fingers smoothing out the folds. My heart twisted in my chest, but I forced a smile. "Thank you, Lydia," I managed to say, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. She was not finished. "Oh, but wait," Lydia said, her voice rising with theatrical energy. She reached behind her chair and lifted the elegant box I had noticed earlier. The ribbon shimmered under the ceiling light, the paper thick and glossy, the kind of wrapping that shouted wealth. She handed it across the table to Mark with exaggerated reverence. "This is for you," she said. Mark, already smug, untied the ribbon and opened the lid with careful precision. Inside, wrapped in silk, lay 2 cruise tickets for a Mediterranean voyage. Lydia's eyes sparkled as she explained, "First-class cabin, private balcony, all meals, excursions included. $12,500 for 2 weeks of pure relaxation. You deserve the very best, Mark, for everything you have done for us." The table fell silent for a moment. The contrast was unbearable. Mark ran his manicured fingers over the tickets like they were priceless artifacts. He grinned at Lydia with approval. "Now this is a real gift," he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. Then he looked at me with that same grin. "You raised her well. She knows how to honor family." His words landed like stones in my stomach. I glanced at the lottery ticket in my hand, its flimsy paper cutting into my palm. My own daughter had presented me with a joke, while showering another man with generosity using money I never recalled giving her. Other family members shifted awkwardly. My sister Margaret cleared her throat, pretending to be interested in the food on her plate. My nephew stared at his hands. Even my grandson looked up from his phone long enough to register the tension. Lydia filled the silence with a laugh. "Well, actions speak louder than words," she declared. Then she leaned toward Mark with a sparkle in her eye. "Some people show love with real gestures. Others." Her voice trailed off, and she gestured toward me. The humiliation burned inside me, but I kept my face calm. "I appreciate the thought, Lydia," I said softly, though my throat tightened with every word. She waved dismissively. "Oh, Dad, it is just a little joke. But remember, if you actually win something, you owe me half. After all, I bought the ticket." Mark chuckled. "Perhaps next year you can surprise us all with something more meaningful," he said, smugness lacing every word. The conversation moved on, but I sat frozen in my chair, the lottery ticket a cruel reminder between my fingers. I could not stop my mind from wandering back. I remembered nights working double shifts at the auto shop, covered in grease, too tired to even change clothes before collapsing into my chair. I remembered those years after Lydia's mother passed, when I raised her alone, doing without so she could have what she needed. Tuition payments, car repairs, new clothes for school, all sacrifices I made gladly. I thought about those days I gave her $2 for ice cream, how her face would light up with joy over something so small. Now she used the same amount to mock me, to belittle me in front of others. Dinner ended with polite farewells, though I noticed Lydia and Mark left quickly. I sat at the table long after the dishes were cleared, staring at the cheap ticket. The house settled into its familiar quiet, but I could still hear Lydia's laughter echoing through the rooms. I placed the lottery slip on the counter and went to bed with a heaviness I had not felt in years. The next morning, routine carried me through. I brewed coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop to review my bank statement. It was a habit I had kept for decades. First, as a young man counting every penny, later, as a retiree guarding what little I had left. The list of charges scrolled before me. Grocery store purchases, utility bills, a few small indulgences. Everything accounted for until my eyes stopped on a line that did not make sense. Premium travel services, $12,500. I blinked and checked again. My coffee went cold in my hands. I flipped to my calendar, cross-checking dates. I had not been near a travel agency. My stomach dropped. The realization struck with brutal clarity. Lydia still had access to my account, access I had granted years ago after her mother's death, in case of emergencies. I had forgotten to remove it. She had used my money, without permission, to buy that cruise package for Mark. The words repeated in my mind like a drumbeat as I sat at the kitchen table staring at the bank statement. I picked up the phone with trembling fingers and dialed Lydia's number. Each ring sounded longer than the last, until finally she answered with that tone she often reserved for me, a mixture of impatience and forced politeness. "Hello, Dad," she said, distracted, as though my call were an interruption to something far more important. "Lydia?" I said, forcing my voice steady. "I am looking at my bank account statement. There is a charge for $12,500 from premium travel services. Do you know anything about this?" There was silence, then a laugh that was light, dismissive, almost mocking. "Oh, that. Yes, I booked Mark his cruise. He deserves something nice for once." My hand tightened around the phone. "You took $12,500 from my account without asking." "I did not take anything," she said quickly, her tone sharpening. "I used family money for a family gift. It is not like you needed it, Dad. It was just sitting there." The word family felt like poison in my ears. "That was not your money, Lydia. That was mine. Money I worked for. You cannot just decide to spend it. My voice cracked, the weight of betrayal pressing against my chest. She sighed as if I were a child refusing to understand something simple. Dad, you are overreacting. Mark has always been there for us. He helped us with the down payment for our house, he paid for Jake's private school tuition, and he keeps our country club membership afloat. He has shown us what real family means. I just wanted to do something for him in return. You would never have spent that money anyway. It would have just collected dust in your account. So why not put it towards something meaningful? Her words hit me harder than any blow. I tried to steady myself, but images flashed through my mind, nights working double shifts at the garage, my back aching as I hunched over broken engines, my hands raw and cracked from grease and metal. I saw myself coming home after 16 hours, collapsing in the old armchair with dinner cold on the table. I remembered saving every penny to pay for Lydia's textbooks in college, scraping together tuition so she could have the future her mother and I always dreamed of for her. I remembered her curled against me as a child, listening to bedtime stories, her small voice whispering, "You are my hero, Dad." Now here she was, dismissing those years as if they meant nothing, telling me that another man deserved more recognition than the sacrifices of her own father. "Lydia," I whispered, "I am your father. I raised you alone after your mother passed. I gave you everything I could. And you steal from me to honor someone else?" She cut me off sharply. "Stop being dramatic. It is not stealing when it is family. Mark has done more for us in recent years than you ever have. He shows us what success looks like, how to be generous, how to live well. You cling to your pennies like they are trophies. There is a difference." The cruelty in her tone left me stunned. For a moment, I could not even breathe. This was my daughter, the little girl I carried on my shoulders at the fair, the teenager who wept on my chest when her mother died, the young woman who once said I was the most important man in her life. Now her voice was colder than I had ever heard it. "Lydia," I said softly, "do you even hear yourself? Do you know what you are saying to me?" "I am saying the truth," she snapped. "You did what fathers are supposed to do. You raised me. That was your job. Mark went above and beyond. That is the difference." The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly, my hands shaking. The dial tone echoed in my ears like a funeral bell. I stared at the quiet kitchen around me, the same walls that had held our laughter years ago, now closing in like a prison. My body slumped in the chair as memories flooded me uncontrollably. I remembered rushing Lydia to the hospital when she broke her arm at 10, holding her hand all night as she slept through the pain. I remembered working overtime to buy her prom dress when she insisted on the one I could not afford. I remembered her smile at graduation when she spotted me in the crowd, exhausted from work but beaming with pride. All those years, all those sacrifices, and now she spoke as if they meant nothing at all. I sat there for hours, staring at nothing, the weight of her betrayal pressing heavier by the minute. My chest felt hollow, my breath shallow, as though I were grieving someone who had died. In truth, maybe I was. The daughter I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone colder, someone selfish, someone I did not recognize. As evening settled in, I dragged myself to the kitchen to throw away the cold coffee and clean up. When I opened the trash can lid, my eyes landed on something that made my breath catch. There, lying among the coffee grounds and scraps of dinner, was the lottery ticket Lydia had tossed at me the night before. Crumpled, stained, worthless in appearance, it stared back at me like a cruel joke. I stared at it for a long time, the paper edges curled and stained. its presence mocking me from the bottom of the trash can. It was just a joke, I told myself. Nothing more than a $2 piece of paper Lydia had thrown in my face while showering Mark with her stolen generosity. Still, something inside me refused to look away. I reached down and plucked it out, brushing off bits of damp food before laying it flat on the counter. The numbers were smeared but still visible. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. This was what she thought of me, a man worth no more than a discarded scrap. For 2 days, the ticket sat on the counter, untouched. I passed by it in the mornings, pretending it was invisible, pretending I did not care. Yet every time my eyes fell on it, my chest tightened with the memory of Lydia's smirk and her cold dismissal of everything I had ever done for her. On the third night, as I sat flipping through television channels with little interest, the local station interrupted programming with the familiar lottery broadcast. The host's cheerful voice rang out, "Good evening, and welcome to tonight's Powerball drawing. The jackpot has rolled over to $115 million. My thumb hovered over the remote, ready to change the channel. But something stopped me. My gaze slid toward the counter where the crumpled ticket lay, the numbers still faintly visible. Almost against my will, I leaned forward. Tonight's winning numbers are... The announcer paused for effect. 6, 19, 24, 33, 42. And the Powerball is 12. My body stiffened. I knew those numbers. I had stared at them before, tracing them with my thumb in a haze of anger the night Lydia had tossed the ticket at me. My heart began to pound. I scrambled off the couch and rushed into the kitchen, grabbing the ticket with trembling fingers. I smoothed it against the counter, reading each line, comparing it to what I had just heard. 6, 19, 24, 33, 42, Powerball 12. Every number matched. Every single one. The room spun. I stumbled into a chair, gripping the edge of the counter to steady myself. The ticket shook in my hands, and I read the numbers again and again, unable to believe it. This worthless scrap, this $2 insult Lydia had flung at me, was worth $115 million. My heart raced, my chest tightening as though it might burst. I pressed the ticket flat, trying to ignore the stains of coffee and grease, seeing only the numbers that could change everything. But the joy that should have come never fully arrived. Instead, a deep ache spread through me. I thought of how Lydia would react, of her laughter turning to demands, of her voice sharp and cold, insisting she deserved half because she had bought the ticket. The ticket had been purchased with stolen money. With my own funds she had plundered. Even in this victory, the shadow of betrayal lingered. I sat there for hours, staring at the ticket, the television still flickering in the background. I imagined the life this money could bring, freedom from financial worry, the ability to travel, to live without counting every dollar. Yet with every thought came another. Lydia's face, her voice, her entitlement. She would not see this as my fortune. She would see it as hers. Sleep eluded me that night. I placed the ticket in a plastic sleeve, sealing it carefully as though it were fragile glass. Every few minutes, I checked it again, as if the numbers might change or the paper might vanish. The night dragged on, until morning light spilled across my kitchen floor, and still I sat with the ticket, torn between awe and despair. The next day, I called the lottery hotline with shaking hands. A recorded voice confirmed the winning numbers. My ticket matched. I had won. The words echoed in my mind, unbelievable and heavy with consequence. $115 million. Enough to erase every hardship I had endured. enough to rewrite my future. Yet my chest felt hollow, as though the prize came with chains I could not yet see. By the third day, news of the winner had spread through town. People whispered in stores and at gas stations, speculating about who it might be. I avoided conversation, clutching the ticket close, unwilling to breathe a word. But secrets travel fast in small communities. And Lydia, with her endless network of friends and her hunger for appearances, heard it before I was ready. I was standing at my kitchen sink, washing dishes, when I heard the screech of tires outside. A car door slammed, and seconds later, Lydia burst through my front door without knocking. Her face was flushed, her eyes wide with something between excitement and greed. She barely stopped to breathe before shouting, "Dad?" I heard, "You won. The lottery. 115 million. Do you understand what this means?" She dropped her purse on the floor and advanced toward me, her hands trembling with energy. I stayed silent, my heart pounding. She was already vibrating with determination, her words spilling out like water from a broken dam. "Remember what I said at dinner? Half of it is mine." Everyone heard me. "Half, Dad." That was the agreement. Her words hung in the air, like smoke from a fire, bitter and choking. Lydia stood in my kitchen, her chest heaving as though she had sprinted across town. Her eyes locked on mine, burning with entitlement and hunger. I set the dish towel down slowly and faced her, the lottery ticket carefully hidden in the plastic sleeve inside the pocket of my shirt. "That ticket was a gift," I said evenly. "Whatever joke you made, whatever words you tossed into the air, it became mine the moment you handed it to me." There is no agreement, her mouth twisted, her lips pulling back in a sneer. "Do not play games with me, Dad." You know what I meant. Everyone at that table heard me say, "Half is mine." Witnesses, legal witnesses. If you think you can cut me out, you are wrong. She slammed her hand on the table, rattling the salt shaker and sending a fork clattering to the floor. "I will sue you. I will take you to court and prove that ticket is mine." "You will not get away with this." I felt my heartbeat thundering in my ears, but my voice stayed calm. "You cannot sue for ownership of a gift, Lydia. That ticket was mine from the moment you gave it to me. And it was bought with money you stole from my account. If anything, you should be ashamed." Her eyes widened, then narrowed, fury overtaking her features. "Stole?" she repeated, her voice rising. "I did not steal anything. I used family money for a family purpose. Mark has done more for us than you ever did. That cruise was a gesture of love. You should be thanking me for showing you what generosity looks like." My chest tightened, but I did not respond. There was no reasoning with her anymore. She saw the world through a lens where only her needs mattered, where every sacrifice I made was dismissed as expected duty. "You think this money makes you powerful?" She pressed on, her voice cutting sharper with each word. "You think you can sit in this shabby kitchen, clinging to that ticket, and deny your own daughter her rightful share? I will not be humiliated like this. I will destroy you publicly if I have to," and she did. Within hours, Lydia had turned to the one battlefield she knew best, social media. By that evening, her posts began appearing on Facebook, dripping with carefully crafted sorrow. A photo of her at my dining table, her eyes red-rimmed, captioned, "Never thought I would say this, but my own father betrayed me. I bought him a lottery ticket for Father's Day, with the understanding that we would share any winnings. He has now decided to keep the entire $115 million for himself. Money changes people." I am heartbroken. The comments came fast. Friends, neighbors, acquaintances, most of them siding with her. "That is awful, Lydia. Stay strong. Your father must have lost his mind. How could he do this to his own daughter? Family money belongs to family. Do not let him get away with this." And then Eric, her husband, added fuel to the fire. On LinkedIn and Twitter, he composed polished statements that carried the weight of professional credibility. What we are experiencing is not just personal betrayal, but financial cruelty. When elders hoard wealth and turn against their children, families fracture. My wife has always been generous, always supported her father. Now she is painted as greedy while he clings to money he would never have used responsibly. His words spread quickly, shared by colleagues and business partners, reshaping the narrative into one where I was the villain, the miser, the ungrateful father who refused to honor his daughter's loyalty. Even people I had known for years avoided me in public, their eyes sliding away at the grocery store or the gas station. It felt as if the entire town whispered behind my back, their judgment sharp and unrelenting. The phone began to ring constantly, reporters wanting comments, neighbors asking if the rumors were true, old acquaintances suddenly curious about my finances. My sister Margaret called in a rush of panic. "John, what is going on? Lydia says you stole her ticket. She is making it sound like you tricked her." I tried to explain, but even to my own ears, it sounded complicated. "Yes, she bought the ticket, but with money she took from me. Yes, she said something about sharing, but it was a joke. No, I do not owe her half of anything." Margaret sighed heavily. "I believe you, John. But the way she's telling it, people will side with her. They see a daughter betrayed, not a father taken advantage of." Sleep became impossible. I sat at the kitchen table late into the night, the ticket lying in its plastic sleeve before me, the glow of my phone lighting up with notification after notification. Lydia's voice echoed in my head, her threats, her accusations, her cold laughter. I had never felt so wealthy and so utterly alone at the same time. On the third morning of this madness, as I sipped a cup of coffee gone bitter before it touched my lips, the phone rang again. The caller ID displayed a number I did not recognize. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something made me answer. A deep, measured voice greeted me. "Mr. Miller, this is William Harris. I am Mark's father. I believe we need to talk." My grip on the phone tightened. "I am not sure what there is to discuss, Mr. Harris. There is quite a lot, actually," he replied calmly. "I was present at that Father's Day dinner. I witnessed every word, every gesture, and I believe my son and your daughter are spinning a story that is far from the truth. Could we meet? Say, at Murphy's Diner on 5th Street in 1 hour? My heart pounded. Mark's father wanting to meet me? This could be a trap, or it could be something else entirely. I hesitated, but his voice carried a kind of authority, the kind of calm that did not waste words. "The lottery ticket," he said simply, "and what I saw that night." "1 hour, Mr. Miller." The line went dead before I could respond. I sat in my kitchen with the receiver still pressed to my ear, the steady hum of the dial tone filling the silence. My first instinct was suspicion. William Harris, Mark's father, was a man of stature in this town, a man whose influence reached into boardrooms and country clubs. If he wanted to corner me, to pressure me into giving Lydia and Mark what they claimed was theirs, this would be the perfect way. And yet, there was something in his voice. A calm certainty, not a threat. He had spoken like a man who carried truth on his side. I set the phone down and stared at the lottery ticket on my table, still tucked in its protective sleeve. My pulse hammered in my ears. If William had truly seen everything that night, if he was willing to speak up, then maybe for the first time since this nightmare began, I would not be alone. Murphy's Diner sat on the corner of 5th Street, a squat brick building with faded red awnings and the smell of fried bacon wafting through the parking lot. It had been a family fixture for decades, the kind of place where construction workers, retirees, and local shop owners gathered in the mornings over bottomless coffee. William Harris was already there when I arrived, seated at a booth by the window. His navy suit stood out against the cracked vinyl and chipped laminate tables, but he looked comfortable, as though he belonged anywhere he chose to sit. He stood when I entered, extending his hand with practiced grace. "Mr. Miller," he said. His handshake was firm, his gaze steady. We slid into the booth across from each other, and before I could speak, Dolores the waitress poured us both steaming cups of coffee without needing to ask. She had been working there for as long as I could remember, and she gave me a small nod before walking away. "I will get straight to the point," William began, his voice low but unwavering. "I was at your house on Father's Day. I saw the entire exchange. Your daughter tossed you that lottery ticket like it was trash. She made a joke about splitting it, but it was a joke, nothing more. And then she turned around and presented Mark with that cruise package she bought with your money. I watched the whole thing. There was no agreement, no contract, nothing binding. It was a gift, plain and simple. I studied his face carefully, searching for any hint of manipulation. But his eyes did not flinch. He spoke with the confidence of a man used to being believed. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked cautiously. "Mark is your son. Lydia is your daughter-in-law. If you side with me, you are going against your own family." His lips pressed into a thin line, and for the first time, I saw a shadow of disappointment in his expression. Because what they are doing is wrong. I raised Mark to value integrity, to build his reputation on honesty. But what I have seen these last weeks disgusts me. The smear campaign, the lies, the entitlement. It is beneath the Harris name. If he wants to burn his reputation to the ground, that is his choice. But I will not stand by silently and watch him drag yours with it. The weight of his words hit me like a tide, and for the first time in days, I felt air return to my lungs. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone, tapping with deliberate precision. "I am going to make a statement," he said. "People trust me in this community. They know I do not lie about business, and this is no different. I will post what I witnessed. Let them decide who is telling the truth." I leaned forward as he typed, the words appearing on the bright screen. As a witness to the Father's Day gathering at John Miller's home, I feel compelled to clarify the situation currently spreading across social media. I personally observed Lydia Johnson present her father with a lottery ticket as a Father's Day gift. There was no negotiation, no agreement to share winnings, no conditions attached. It was a gift, plain and simple. The current claims being made against Mr. Miller are false, and I cannot remain silent while a good man's reputation is destroyed by members of my own family. He read it aloud, then looked up at me. "Does that reflect what happened?" I swallowed hard and nodded. "Exactly." His finger hovered for only a moment before pressing post. Almost immediately, the phone buzzed with notifications. Comments began pouring in within minutes. People from the business community, neighbors, colleagues, they all chimed in. If William Harris says this is what happened, I believe him. Finally, the truth. I knew something about Lydia's story did not add up. This changes everything. Relief flooded through me so quickly my eyes stung. William slipped the phone back into his pocket and wrapped his hands around his coffee mug. The truth has a way of surfacing, Mr. Miller. Sometimes it just needs the right person to speak it. We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching families trickle into the diner for Saturday pancakes, teenagers glued to their phones, older couples sharing the newspaper. The world moved on around us, ordinary and steady while mine shifted under my feet. For the first time in weeks, I felt the faintest spark of hope. When I returned home, the shift was already noticeable. My phone was buzzing not with accusations, but with apologies. With neighbors who admitted they had judged too quickly. With friends who said they stood by me now that the truth had come to light. Lydia's posts still circulated, but they were met with skepticism. People questioning her motives, pointing to William Harris's testimony as proof. The tide had begun to turn. 2 days later, the call I had both dreaded and prayed for finally came. I was stirring sugar into my coffee when the phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered, my voice tentative. Mr. Miller? A crisp female voice asked. This is Janet Chen with the Michigan Lottery Commission. I am calling regarding your Powerball ticket. The verification process has been completed. We can confirm your ticket is authentic, and you are the sole winner of $115 million. My knees nearly gave out, and I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. She continued, her tone warm but professional. Given the public interest in your case, we would like to invite you to a formal presentation ceremony. You may choose a private meeting if you prefer, but in light of recent events, transparency might benefit you. Would you be open to a public ceremony at our Lansing headquarters this Friday at 10 a.m.? The room swayed as I tried to absorb her words. A ceremony. Cameras. A public acknowledgement that I had won. The very thing Lydia and Eric had fought to claim for themselves would now be broadcast for the world to see. My throat tightened, but I found my voice. Yes, I said slowly. Yes, I would like the public ceremony. Excellent, Janet replied. Congratulations, Mr. Miller, this is going to change your life. Those words replayed in my head for days leading up to the ceremony. I hardly slept the night before, pacing my living room, staring at the suit I had laid out across the back of a chair. It was the same navy blue suit I had worn to my wife's funeral, pressed and kept carefully in a garment bag all these years. The white shirt was crisp, the tie Lydia had once given me for Christmas, folded neatly alongside it. My shoes gleamed from a polish I had not bothered with in years. It felt surreal, like I was preparing for a wedding or a trial, something where the weight of the occasion pressed against every breath. Friday morning arrived gray and cool, the kind of Michigan morning where the clouds linger low and the wind carries a damp chill. I drove to the Lottery Commission headquarters in Lansing, gripping the steering wheel tighter than I needed to. The city loomed ahead, glass buildings reflecting the pale light, traffic flowing like veins through its streets. When I pulled into the parking lot, my stomach twisted at the sight of news vans lined up along the curb. Reporters milled about with microphones, camera crews adjusting equipment, the buzz of excitement thick in the air. Inside the building, officials guided me through a maze of hallways until I reached a large room with a backdrop of the Michigan Lottery logo. At the front stood an oversized check so large, it required 2 staff members to hold it upright. Rows of chairs faced the podium, already filled with reporters and photographers. Flashbulbs popped the moment I entered. Mr. Miller. Janet Chen greeted me with a professional smile, her clipboard tucked under one arm. Are you ready? As ready as I will ever be. I said, forcing a weak smile. My palms were damp, my heart hammering. The ceremony began with formalities, introductions, statistics about the lottery, details of the winning numbers. When Janet announced me as the sole winner of $115 million, applause filled the room, mingled with the staccato of camera shutters. I stepped to the podium, the oversized check behind me. The official documents spread across the table in front of me. The microphones bristled like a cluster of eager mouths, waiting for my words. "This is certainly unexpected," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "I am grateful for this blessing, and I plan to use it responsibly. I want to live with dignity, to pursue dreams I had put aside, and to help others where I can." I paused, scanning the room filled with strangers, their pens poised, their cameras capturing every blink. I am not a man of many words, but I know one thing. Fortune does not change who we are. It reveals us. I hope it reveals me to be the kind of man my wife would have been proud of, and the kind of neighbor this community deserves. The room erupted again in applause, though I could see in some reporters' eyes the hunger for drama, for a story larger than gratitude. And right on cue, drama arrived. The double doors at the back of the room slammed open, and Lydia burst through, Eric on her heels. She was dressed in a designer dress too fine for the occasion, her hair curled into perfection, her lips painted a shade of defiance. Eric wore a tailored suit, his face set in that polished confidence he always carried like armor. They marched down the aisle, their presence sucking the air from the room. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cameras swiveled away from me to capture them. "That is our ticket." Lydia's voice rang out, sharp and frantic. She pointed at me, her finger trembling with fury. "He is stealing from me. I bought that ticket. I said half was mine. He is a liar." Gasps spread through the audience. Security personnel moved quickly, stepping into their path, but Lydia twisted free, her voice shrill and desperate. "Everyone here needs to know the truth. That ticket belongs to me. He is trying to take everything from his own daughter." Reporters surged forward, microphones thrust out, cameras flashing furiously. "Mr. Miller, is this true?" one shouted. "Your daughter claims you are withholding her share. Do you have a comment?" I stood tall at the podium, my hands resting firmly on either side. My heart pounded, but my voice emerged calm and clear, steadier than I had ever felt. "The ticket was a Father's Day gift," I said, looking directly at the sea of cameras. "It was given to me freely. Mr. William Harris, who was present that night, has already confirmed exactly what happened. There was no agreement, no negotiation, no contract. It was a gift." Plain and simple, Lydia shrieked, lunging forward as Eric grabbed her arm. "He is lying." Everyone heard me say half was mine. "You cannot do this to me, Dad. You cannot humiliate me like this." Her voice cracked, desperation spilling over into hysteria. Eric tried to rein her in, his own voice raised now. "This is financial cruelty. He is twisting the story to make us look greedy when all we wanted was fairness. My wife deserves her share. We had a verbal agreement." But the tide was shifting. Reporters pressed harder. "What about Mr. Harris's statement?" one asked. "He says there was no agreement." Another chimed in. "Mr. Miller, do you intend to give your daughter anything?" I exhaled slowly, my words deliberate. "What I intend is to live honestly." That ticket was tossed at me like an afterthought, while the real gift of the night, a cruise package, was bought with money taken from my account without permission. I raised my daughter alone. I worked decades of double shifts to provide for her, and this is how she honored me. I owe her nothing but the truth, and the truth is this: the ticket is mine. A hush spread across the room, broken only by the frantic snapping of cameras. Lydia's face crumpled, her eyes wide as the reality set in. She tried to speak, but the words stumbled, incoherent. Eric tugged her toward the exit, both of them red-faced, their composure shattered. Security followed closely, ensuring they did not cause further disruption. The crowd murmured, reporters already typing furiously, their headlines practically writing themselves. Father stands firm against daughter's claim. Lottery winner declares ticket was gift, not agreement. Public meltdown at ceremony. The rest of the event passed in a blur. Papers were signed, photos taken, hands shaken. But the image that stayed with me was Lydia's face. Rage, desperation, disbelief, burned into my memory as clearly as if it had been seared there. By the time I drove home, exhaustion pressed heavy on my shoulders. The ceremony had been victory, yes, but not the kind of victory I had once imagined. Instead of celebration, it felt like survival. I had defended myself publicly, stood my ground, and the world finally saw the truth. Yet beneath it all, sorrow gnawed at me. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, had stood in front of strangers and called me a thief. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table once again, the oversized ceremonial check propped against the wall, the official documents stacked neatly beside it. I sipped my tea slowly, letting the silence of the house wrap around me. For the first time in weeks, I felt a measure of peace. Until headlights swept across my window. A car door slammed, footsteps hurried up the walkway, and a knock echoed against my door. I rose, my chest tightening, already knowing who it would be. When I opened the door, Lydia stood there, her shoulders slumped, her eyes swollen from crying. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her hair tangled, the perfect mask she always wore now cracked and broken. Her voice trembled as she spoke, softer than I had heard in years. "Dad, please, we need to talk. I need your help. We are losing everything. The house, the cars, Eric's business, it is all collapsing. If you do not give us something, we will be ruined." Her words hung in the doorway, trembling on her lips as though speaking them had already cost her more pride than she could afford. Lydia's hands twisted in front of her, fingers tugging at the frayed hem of her designer sleeve. She was trying to appear vulnerable, to summon the little girl I had once known. But her eyes still carried that sharpness I had come to recognize, the calculation behind the tears. I stepped aside, gesturing her into the living room. She walked past me, her perfume faint but familiar, and sank onto the edge of the couch. Her knees bounced as she spoke quickly, her voice cracking, her words tumbling out in a rush. "Dad, please, you have no idea how bad things are. Eric's business has collapsed. The mortgage payments are months behind. Credit cards, loans, everything is overdue. We are drowning. If the bank forecloses, we will have nothing. Jake will have to leave school, we will lose the house, the cars, everything." She pressed her palms together in a pleading motion. $2 million. That is all we need. $2 million would save us. You have $115 million. That is pocket change to you now. You would not even feel it. I lowered myself into the recliner across from her, folding my hands in my lap. My voice was calm, though inside my chest my heart ached with the weight of everything unsaid. "Lydia, $2 million is not pocket change. It represents 40 years of the life I lived before this. It is more than I earned in my entire working life. And it is not the amount that matters. It is what it means." Her face tightened, panic flashing in her eyes. She leaned forward, her tone growing sharper. Do not talk to me about meaning, Dad. This is survival. You can lecture me all you want later, but right now, we need help. I am begging you. You have the power to fix everything with a single signature, a single check. Please, I studied her carefully. She was using every tool she had. Pleading eyes, a trembling voice, the appeal to my instincts as a father. It was the same routine she had mastered as a teenager when she wanted something she knew I could not afford. The tears, the soft voice, the suggestion that she could not cope without me. Back then, I had given in, scraping together money for her dresses, her school trips, her endless wants. And I realized with painful clarity that all these years I had not been helping her. I had been teaching her that she could take without consequence. You stole from me, Lydia, I said softly. You took $12,500 from my account to buy another man a gift. You humiliated me in front of family. You went online and smeared me in front of the whole community. You tried to claim my ticket in front of reporters, calling me a thief. And now you are sitting here, asking me for millions as if none of that happened. Why should I reward that? Her jaw tightened. She blinked rapidly, then tried again, her voice rising higher. Because I am your daughter. Because family takes care of family. You cannot just sit there with all that money and let us collapse. What kind of father would do that? I leaned back, my chest heavy but resolute. A father who has finally learned that enabling his child's worst habits is not love. A father who is done being used. The tears stopped abruptly. Her shoulders stiffened, her eyes hardened. The mask of vulnerability fell away, replaced with something sharper, colder. She rose to her feet, pacing in front of the window like a trapped animal. So, this is it? You are really going to turn your back on me? On your own daughter? You think that money makes you better than me? You think you can walk away and leave me to suffer? She spun toward me, her voice like ice. If you do this, do not expect to be part of my life anymore. Do not expect to see Jake. Do not expect Christmas dinners, birthdays, graduations. You will die a lonely old man in this house with no family around you, all because you chose money over blood. The words sliced deep, sharper than any knife. But I did not flinch. I had already mourned the daughter I thought I had. The little girl who once curled in my lap and whispered that I was her hero was gone. What stood before me was someone else entirely, someone I could not reach. If that is your choice, Lydia, I said quietly, then I will accept it. For a moment, her mouth opened, as if she could not believe I had said it. Then her expression twisted into something ugly, her face flushed with fury. You have changed, she spat. Money has made you cruel. I shook my head slowly. No, money has made me free. She grabbed her purse, stormed toward the door, and slammed it behind her so hard the frame rattled. I sat in the silence that followed, my heart pounding, my throat tight. The echo of her footsteps on the walkway faded, and with them, so did the last fragile hope that we could find common ground. Months passed. The dust settled. Lydia made good on her threats. She stopped calling. She stopped visiting. She blocked me on social media, cut me off from updates about Jake, and spread whispers that I was selfish, greedy, cold. But the more time went on, the less it mattered. My life had shifted into something new, something I never thought I would have at my age. I sold the house on Maple Street and moved 2 hours south to a quiet neighborhood outside Dayton. The new house was modest, tucked on a tree-lined street where no one recognized me as the lottery winner. To my neighbors, I was just John Miller, a man who liked to drink his coffee on the porch and tend to the small patch of flowers in his yard. It was the anonymity I needed. But it was not just about escape. I needed purpose. I needed something to remind me that my hands still mattered. So I bought Henderson's Classic Auto Restoration, a small garage that had been struggling for years. The smell of motor oil, the clang of tools, the hum of engines. It brought me back to the life I had lived before everything went wrong. I hired 3 young mechanics, men eager to learn but struggling to find work. Together we restored old cars, one gleaming fender at a time, bringing machines back to life. With part of my winnings, I also started the Single Fathers Foundation, remembering all those nights when I had sat alone at the kitchen table trying to figure out how to make ends meet after my wife died. The foundation gave small grants to men raising children on their own, men who needed help with school fees, medical bills, rent. I wanted to give them what I had never had, a hand to steady them when the weight was too much to bear. Evenings were quiet. I walked the streets of my new neighborhood without whispers following me. I drank coffee at the local diner where the waitress called me Hon without recognizing me from the news. I felt something I had not felt in years. Peace. Sometimes I thought of Lydia. I wondered how far she had fallen, whether Eric had managed to keep their lifestyle afloat or whether the whole facade had crumbled. I wondered if Jake asked about me, if he remembered the afternoons we spent at the park, the way his laughter once filled the air. The thoughts hurt, but less with each passing week. I had done what I could. I had given everything, and it had not been enough. Now it was her turn to live with the consequences of her choices. In my office at the garage, framed on the wall, hung the lottery ticket. Not as a trophy, not as a symbol of wealth, but as a reminder. It was wrinkled, stained, nearly destroyed, but it had revealed the truth about my life in a way nothing else could. Sometimes the most valuable gifts come disguised as garbage. Sometimes the lessons we need arrive wrapped in pain. I leaned back in my chair one evening, the shop quiet around me, the smell of fresh paint lingering from a restored '67 Mustang. Through the window, stars began to emerge in the dusky sky. I thought of everything I had lost and everything I had gained. I was no longer a man defined by betrayal. I was a man free to live with dignity, to help where I chose, to rebuild what mattered. For the first time in decades, I felt whole. If you like this story, please subscribe and tell us about your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next one, click on the box on the screen.